Pepe! Yes, Ryan, Ricardo Pepe, the hero down in Honduras, saving the U.S. men's national team with the biggest performance we've seen from a young player and from the number 9 position in general in a long time. We're going to break it all down here on Stars and Strikes, the road to Qatar 2022. Let's go.
Finally, from Christian Pulisic scores. Redemption in the United States. Barely 15 seconds into the second half. Solo goal. USA lead.
That's right, Chaz. We finally got a result after a troublesome first 2 games. Finally got the result we needed. We made it 5 points out of 9. Obviously not ideal, but hey, not a bad first 3 games after coming out with a big 4-1 win over Honduras. Pepe was the man. Like you said, we were waiting on one person to step up. We talked about in our last episode how we'd need one of our big guns, either Christian Pulisic or Gio Reyna. Obviously, Gio Reyna was out with some fitness issues. Pulisic couldn't step up, and out comes the man, Ricardo Pepe, to save the day. 1 goal, but also pretty influential in a couple of others. So that's exactly the kind of performance we needed from one of the guys to kind of lift us up, at least get some good points on the board, and 5 points now in World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, 5 points, tied for second. It's a 3-way tie with us, Canada, and Panama for second place in World Cup qualifying standings right now. And, we're happy right now about the final game and how pumped we are about the young kid, the 18-year-old, making a name for himself on the biggest stage possible for him at the moment. And there's also that other side of it. It's like that first half was probably the worst that I've ever seen from a U.S. men's national team. I mean, that's going back to the Bob Bradley, to the Jurgen Klinsmann days, to the Bruce Arena days. And it's like, it was horrendous. I mean, I just don't understand what Greg's mindset is of why he tries to change the system in a must-win game situation. He did it against Mexico. We got burned for it early. We switched it up, went back to what we did, and ended up winning the game. It was the same thing here. He tried to go with the back 3/back 5. We look so disjointed. It's not good. We're all over the place. We go down 1-0 at halftime. He brings on 3 subs at halftime, go back to the 4-3-3. Boom. All of a sudden we're playing well again. The players are more comfortable and we start scoring goals. It's like, I don't understand why he tries to get cute in the worst possible times.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about perhaps changing the system, but I don't think by any means did we mean change the system that much. I mean, bring Bello, bring Sands in, and play 5 at the back in a must-win game. That first half was just horrendous, and a lot of it was down to just the lack of midfield whatsoever. I mean, it really was just Tyler Adams, Kellen Acosta, and that back 5 just not coordinated at all, mostly down to James Sand. I mean, I really don't understand how he got over 70 minutes under his belt that game, but seriously, 5 in the back in a must-win game, that is when we talk about changing the system, that's what I was expecting is, change up the front 3, change up the midfield dynamic. When, obviously we had McKennie out, we're going to need a different combination of midfielders to work together. 5 in the back just seems like a very odd plan of action going into things, going into a match like Honduras, when we easily could take the game, by the reins. Greg chose to defend from the first minute. So it was an interesting call. At least he, changed it at some point.
I mean, just look at the goal. I'm looking at my notes here from this game. And when I look at the goal, sloppy giveaway, John Brooks gets pulled out of position, Honduras score. I mean, and you're just looking at there was bad first touches all around from pretty much everybody on the field, no matter who it was. Even Christian himself had a couple bad touches where it's like, dude, what are you doing? Tyler Adams had a few right on the end line and the touch line where they just gave away possession. James Sands had an absolute shocker. If I'm being completely honest, I don't see it with him. I really don't see how he should be getting into this team from now on. Poor passing, bad first touch, and he just keeps getting beat one-on-one. And yes, in the second half, he did get better and had a couple nice tackles where he was able to win back possession, but he really struggled throughout the game. And it just, in that first half, it seemed like it was just Christian Pulisic. Yes, George Bello had a couple nice moments. Ricardo Pepi had a couple here and there, but it seemed like we'd try and have Christian get the ball. He dropped super deep like he did in the Canada game, and he'd have no options in front of him. And then as soon as we make the substitutions and the switch of formation, all of a sudden, when Christian's driving with the ball, he has options around him. And what do you know? He drives forward with the ball. We end up scoring a goal off Ricardo Pepi. And it's just, or excuse me, off Anthony Robinson. And I don't understand. Like, why would you change it like this at that moment? Like, maybe in the first game you try something, you don't have Christian and stuff like that. But I can't fathom it. And we have to give credit to Greg for making the substitution and not being stubborn and staying with his ways. There have been coaches that have done that and have gotten burned. So credit to him for switching it up, but dang, did he miss it from the start.
And, if we want to give Greg the benefit of the doubt, do we think that maybe starting that way and then changing it up was perhaps the game plan all along? Or do you think that was just sheer panic mode and do what we
it was out of need. It was definitely out of need. I mean, I think I tweeted something out about it, right near the end of the first half. It's like, this has got to change. It was horrendous. It wasn't like a poor half where it's, maybe not something's not clicking. The passes aren't being strung together well. There's something wrong. Nothing was good. Nothing we were doing was working. There was a massive gap in the midfield. Whenever we lost the ball, which happened a lot because there were a lot of bad giveaways, a lot of bad first touches, and we lost the ball. And there's this giant gap between the defense and the midfield, and it pulled out guys like John Brooks and Miles Robinson, and that's why they scored their first goal. I mean, literally, we gave the ball away. There was nobody sitting in front of the back line. John Brooks has to go out and press. Next thing you know, a couple little quick passes, boom, they're behind, they score a goal. And it's that simple. And we did not do any of the little things right in the first half, and it was bad. There was no link in the attack. It just felt like we were smashing balls up to them. And when we did get players up the field, we weren't getting support into the box. When we had guys down the wing, we had Pepi, Pulisic, whoever down the wing it was, there weren't players getting in the box in support of him.
And here's a stat going back to Pulisic that I just want to share, just to show how sheer, how messy it was at times. Christian Pulisic has a 53% pass accuracy that game, but 10 recoveries. I mean, just having 10 recoveries, picking up the ball, getting the ball rolling, picking it up by yourself, and then having a 53% pass accuracy just kind of shows how disjointed that attack was when trying to, open up, look for options. I mean, there was really nothing going forward. Christian Pulisic was out here trying to create things left and right on his own pretty much. And without just the support of his midfield, without the support of the others in the attack, there's just really nowhere to go. So obviously 53% pass accuracy just goes to show, I mean, we know Pulisic, he's not that sloppy. It's just a sheer lack of outlet up top.
And it was also the playing players in positions they're maybe not be totally comfortable in. Obviously, we know Tyler Adams has played in that right wing back role a decent amount of time for RB Leipzig, but for the US, he's much more of the holding midfielder. We need him in the center of it because when we had the likes of James Sands and Kellen Acosta in there, they don't have the legs and they can't do what Tyler Adams does in terms of breaking up play. It felt like he was kind of pigeonholed on that right sideline, especially early in the first half. And it's like we didn't have our most destructive midfielder, and the only, first choice, if you will, if when we talk about who our best three midfielders are, the one who's probably the number, our best holding midfielder, we didn't have him in that position. And it just all goes back to, why are you getting cute? What are you doing? Come on. But yeah, like we said, credit to him for doing it. And we got to talk about Christian Pulisic's injury. Thomas Tuchel said he's going to miss about 7 to 10 days. So approximately 3 games for Chelsea, which isn't ideal, of course, being now that they got Lukaku and all the other competition that they have just to get into that Chelsea team. But we got to say about Christian, he showed some fight. I mean, my goodness, you can see the passion and how badly Christian wants to win. At that point, it was 1-1. He got absolutely clobbered just outside the 18, tried to push on. But, that first sprint, you could tell his ankle just wasn't able for it. And good on for other players for stepping up, like Ricardo Pepi, like Brendan Aronson, in that time when we needed it most. But I mean, like I said, Christian was showing the heart of a warrior. And I think now in my mind, there's no doubt about who should be the captain of this team each and every single game, as long as he's available. Like there's zero doubt in my mind, especially with the whole Weston McKennie thing and the Tyler Adams that we were talking about in the previous games with the flakiness, the weird comments, the mistakes, and then the whole Weston McKennie saga where he ended up getting sent home. This is Christian Pulisic's team. It's always been his team, but now he's the leader and he's the guy that all the ones look to, and he's got to be the captain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you, especially after these past few games, seeing how Tyler Adams, how Weston McKennie took to World Cup qualifying for the first time. It just seemed like they weren't all up for it. I mean, they had other priorities at times. They may not have been up to the tempo of World Cup qualifying, but like you mentioned, Christian Pulisic was there the whole time. He was straight. He was ready to fight. He was a warrior. Even when injured, he wanted to push on for his team because that's how much it meant to him. He's been in that position where we haven't done it, and he's that guy that's now going to say, this isn't happening again. He's got to be that leader now to push on these other guys that haven't been there. He has to say, man, that hurts when you're not, traveling to the World Cup, and I'm not going to let that happen again. So I think without a doubt, he is the guy that can, spur on the team with that notion, saying, we've got to get this done. Because after these 3 games, I don't think Tyler Adams, I don't think Weston McKennie are those guys. Clearly, they're not taking it as seriously as a guy as Christian Pulisic, who's getting injured on the field and carrying on as best he could. I mean, not to say Tyler Adams isn't taking things that seriously, but in Weston McKennie's case, come on, man.
And I thought Tyler Adams wasn't bad in the first couple of games. It seemed like something was off with him mentally. Just listening to his comments post game, it was almost like excuses, and that's not something that I would expect from either of them. And then the whole Weston McKennie thing seemed like it was just so out of character from him. And the one constant has been Christian Pulisic. He's our most important player on the field. I think that's clear. And another thing about that whole question mark of why they started in the system that they started in is it didn't get the most out of Christian Pulisic. And the thing, especially with international soccer, is they don't have enough time. You don't have the same amount of time to train your tactics, and with all your players together, the reality is the best players in international soccer win games. You have to have your system to fit your best players. And what Greg Berhalter should be doing, especially in attack, is setting the team up to make Christian Pulisic as best as he can be. Because at the end of the day, he's our most proven goal scorer, he's our most creative player, and he's the guy that everyone needs to look to. Whenever anything needs to happen, it's coming from Christian Pulisic. We got guys like Brendan Aronson stepping up, Giovanni Reyna, obviously, who missed out in this game due to injury, but we have other guys that are there to complement him. At the end of the day, this is Christian Pulisic's team, and it needs to be built around him to get the most out of him. And if he's unfit or gets injured like he did then you switch things out to try and make everything else work and win the game the other way.
Yeah, and you talk about in international soccer, there's sometimes only one outlet. You got to use your best players. There's other countries that have a DNA in the way they play. You have Spain that has their passing, their really strong domination of the ball. You have Germany does the same with their really strong midfield. Italy, strong defense and everything. United States doesn't have a DNA. They don't have an identity that carries on through manager to manager, a system that every player, when they're going to the United States, they know how to play that. Greg Berhalter is trying to build an identity in each camp that he has. We can't always rely on every batch of players being able to play the same way. And at the end of the day, sometimes when you don't have a hard set system, you gotta count on your big players, and you have to support them the best you can.
Every time we start to try and build that system, it seems like he switches it up. Like it seems like, okay, we're trying to build this possession, building out from the back, the high press type things. And then all of a sudden we just don't do it. And it doesn't make any sense. And when we get back to what we've done and what's been successful, it all starts looking better. And I mean, I'm not trying to say people need to question Greg Berhalter, but I mean, like, it's mind blowing. At times I don't even like, I'm stuttering because I'm like, I just don't understand what went through his mind to be like, yeah, let's change everything up. We haven't been playing well. Maybe you want to like spark something, but to change something that drastically in that moment, what do you do? I mean, like, he did the same thing in the Mexico game in the Nations League, and we looked terrible at the start. We switched things back up. Boom, bada bing, bada boom. We end up winning the game because everyone starts playing better. And I go for it.
That like you mentioned, that happening in the Mexico game, now that happening in the third game of this World Cup qualifying window, do you think it's something that he does out of sheer, fear to lose his job? I mean, if he's coming back from 2 draws from games he should have won, and then now he's going into the third game of World Cup qualifying where he knows he needs a win. Do you think he's saying, okay, we need 5 in the back, like I can't concede, we just have to score whatever way possible? Do you think in that Mexico game he's saying we need to win this game, 5 in the back, we can't let them score?
I mean, yes, you could sure it up, but at the end of the day, some of the times when when you're attacking, that back 5 becomes a back 3, and those wing backs get pushed high up the field. I mean, in that one, we started, I believe it was DeAndre Edlin and Serginho Dest, 2 extremely attacking players. You also had George Bello in this game and Tyler Adams. Obviously, Tyler Adams much more defensive, but George Bello's bombing down the wing. He had a couple of really nice moments, just didn't really have enough support in the box when he went to go cross. But it's just, I feel like right now, it's pretty obvious that our best formation that gets the best out of the players that we have is the 4-3-3. And from my eyes, we're at our best when we're pressing high up the field and trying to bring it to the other team. And obviously, in the likes of some of these qualifying games where you're going to have a bulk of the possession, we need to improve our passing out from the back. We need to be able to slowly build up. And yes, getting Zach Steffen back from COVID will help with that. Matt Turner did a really good job, I think, in terms of his goal saving. He only conceded 2 goals in 3 matches. That's exactly, if you could ask any coach in 3 games, if you only concede 2 goals, would you take it? Everyone would say yes. He had that one really big save in the second half when it was 1-1, or actually, excuse me, 0-1. Honduras was still winning at that time. So shout out to Matt Turner. But the reality is Zach Steffen's better, I think, with his feet. And I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and going back to just the formation, like you mentioned, even when we're in a 4-3-3, which is what we believe to be our best system, I think that system best suits everybody, not just Christian Pulisic as well. I mean, you could throw any players in there, even if you move Christian Pulisic into like a 10 position. But regardless, I mean, if you put in Matthew Hoppe, if you put in Brendan Aronson, Gio Reyna, and any one of our number 9s, I think the 4-3-3 is what suits them absolutely best. And going off of that same vein, I think our fullbacks benefit from that system as well. And it just seems like every single player is so much better suited to play in that way, that it makes almost 0 sense to go into a 3 or 5 at the back. So it's got to be one thing or the other going forward. I mean, hopefully not the other.
There are a couple other players that I want to touch on here in this little segment that we're doing. Let's start with John Brooks. John Brooks got subbed out at halftime. Obviously, he was the one that got sucked out for the goal. Did not have a great game against Canada. He missed out against El Salvador in the first game. And John Brooks is our most proven center back over in Europe. We've seen what he's done for Wolfsburg. He's going to be playing in the Champions League. He's been really consistent for them. He's really good at his ball distribution. However, for the national team as of late, he just hasn't played great. And do you think that his spot is really in jeopardy here in terms of going forward? And for the next game, would you start him?
I don't think his spot is in jeopardy at all, to be honest. I think he's had a far too long of a history with the United States men's national team to, be under scrutiny that fast. He's going to have to go through a lot more, even at the club level, to start having that conversation. Although we do have other center backs coming up, Miles Robinson's been doing great lately, but apart from that, we're kind of struggling for another option. And I think John Brooks, even on his bad days, is better than some of our other options. You know, yeah, he gave up a goal, but defenders do that all the time. We've talked about defending mistakes all the time from other guys that have come in and played, you know. So, you know, Mark McKenzie in the Nations League had one, I believe, or in the Gold Cup. And you know, he's still coming in and putting in shifts every now and then too. So I think it's good that we're building you know, some guys in the back, Mark McKenzie, Miles Robinson, that can work with John Brooks. But you know, while John Brooks may have a bad game in here and there, I think he is absolutely still going to be one of the key figures in our defense, without a doubt.
Yeah, and then another guy I want to bring up is Anthony Robinson, the left back. Came onto the field, scored the game-tying cross after a cross from Sebastian Lletget. That was the one where Christian drove forward with the ball, played it out wide. Lletget crossed it to the back post, got beyond Pepe, and a nice finish with his right foot from Robinson to tie the ball game up. And he looked really good. And I think at this point, we've been talking about formations in the 4-3-3. For me, at least, Anthony Robinson has solidified himself at this point as the number one left back. I think if he's fit, he should be playing. And I think he's just one of those players. It's like, you know what? He's the best we got in this position. He's playing really well. He's a good defender. He's big. He's strong. He can be good in the air. And he's also shown his abilities going forward. He's had some good ball deliveries, and he's been getting into the box late and scoring goals now. He scored his first goal for Fulham recently, and then now he's scoring his first goal for the national team. And yeah, I think from after this performance, him more so than anybody, we'll get to Ricardo Pepi and what we think about the number 9 in a little bit. But for me, Anthony Robinson, and I think I've thought that for a while, but now I think everyone else is starting to realize that this guy is a dude.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I think it's you know, ever since we started doing this podcast, it started as a case of, you know, Anthony Robinson's, you know, super defensive. I don't know. We want someone that's able to go forward more. And since then, we've kind of seen him grow, you know, and without a doubt, he's working on that, and we're seeing it week to week. So I think this goal too is gonna do bits on him and say, you know, we're capable of going forward. Serginho Dest does it all the time. He's successful at it, and Anthony Robinson, if he continues developing in this way, we could seriously have a player that's able and capable of going forward, as well as being that strong, stable man in the back as well. And I think that, for me, is what I would prefer over everything. Someone that can get the job defensively while still contributing in the attack. For me, that's better than any amount of goals and assists you can provide as a fullback if you're still leaving the back open. So I really like the way he's developing, being able to kind of, you know, the Swiss Army knife guy that can do it all. So I'm really, really excited for him, especially with this goal.
Yeah, and then another fullback that came on and made an impact was DeAndre Yedlin. He assisted Ricardo Pepi's goal, the header. It was a really nice cross. He got in some good space. And I think DeAndre Yedlin has shown that he's now a very capable right back. And without Serginho Dest, you know, DeAndre Yedlin's one of the more experienced players in the team. He's dealt with some injury issues. He went through a couple rough periods with his club team and saw some extended leave from the national team. But it's good to have DeAndre back. He's a weapon, especially with that pace. I mean, coming off the bench too, it's a weapon. And it's good to see him, because, I mean, that ball was absolutely squished. And like I said, we're going to talk about a lot about Ricardo Pepi coming up very soon. So make sure to stay tuned for that, because what a debut from the kid. But yeah, the last player I want to get to, well, there's two more.
Real quick, I just want to talk about
Go for it.
too, just ask you on the note of DeAndre Yedlin, we have Anthony Robinson, you know, popping off, doing as best he could. Do we think the introduction and the success that DeAndre Yedlin has been having during this period of this struggling time for Serginho Dest, do you think they can maybe start the the scale could start tipping in one's favor now that Serginho Dest is struggling and DeAndre Yedlin is finding some more success in the side?
I think Serginho is a little bit better player. I think when you just watch it, technically, obviously, it's not really close, but DeAndre Yedlin's experience definitely plays a factor in it, and the fitness is also a big one. Obviously, we just saw Dest go down with an injury, so hopefully he's going to be okay and he'll be back ready for Barcelona pretty soon and come back stronger than ever for the US. But I think that's a good problem to have when you have two options that you believe in and that are getting the job done at that fullback position.
I think too is what Serginho Dest lacks right now is the experience, 100%. He has the skill, he's got the talent to pretty much be one of the best right backs in the world. But I think what holds him back is at times is his IQ. He's got everything in his skill cabinet to do it, but he doesn't know when and where is the best time to
And it's
to
not
get it
just
done.
that.
And I think DeAndre Yedlin could be a good guy to work under in the national team with that experience to kind of grow as a player.
And we know Barcelona isn't what it once was, but it's still Barcelona. He's playing in a team that dominates most of the games that he plays in. It's a very, very different thing when you're playing in CONCACAF. All the physicality, all the other, like, just the grittiness, the bad pitches, the hostile environments. It's a different animal. And I think a lot of the younger European players are starting to figure that out, that it's not the same. You're not going to be playing in good conditions all the time. In fact, you're probably going to be playing in pretty crappy conditions, and you got to overcome that. And I think that's something that they're learning and that they will improve on. We talked about Tyler Adams mentioning some things like in press conferences. That was one of them. He was like, "Oh, I'd almost rather play France." Well, it's like, okay, yes, France is going to come at you. It's not going to be as physical of a game. You're going to be playing on a better field and all this stuff. It's like, yes, but this is North America. You're going to be playing down in El Salvador. You got to go down to Cuba. You got to go do all this stuff where you're not going to be comfortable, and you have to overcome those challenges. And I think they did a good job in this game. The U.S. actually out-fouled Honduras, and that's a good thing, especially from these young players. They're not backing down when players come in and slide and tackle them. Obviously, we saw Christian Pulisic get absolutely chopped down, and then eventually someone went right through him and he got hurt, which is extremely unfortunate. But that's the reality of CONCACAF, and it was good to see these players being physical right back, getting right back into the faces of all the other players of Honduras. And I think that needs to be something that they continue to do, but you can't let that get out of hand and let all that get to your head, because that's when you start making mistakes and they capitalize on it.
Yeah, and I especially love that stat. I wasn't aware of that, but out fouling Honduras is kind of a good sign to see that this team knows what's what. They know what they're set out for when they're playing against a team like that. Obviously, but there's a lot of growing that has to happen too. But and fouls aren't necessarily a good thing. But to see that the players are up for the occasion and playing CONCACAF football the way it's meant to be played is pretty cool. So I like that.
Yeah, and then one player I wanted to mention before we talk about the strikers is Brendan Aronson. He really struggled in that first match that he started against El Salvador. And then now in back-to-back games, he comes off the bench and scores a goal. That now brings him, in his 10 appearances for the U.S. men's national team, 5 goals and 3 assists. He's killing it over at Salzburg. I mean, he's a player that's on a rise. And sometimes Mike doesn't quite get the love that we see the likes of Gio Reyna get. But Brendan Aronson is legit. He's 20 years old, almost 21. And I mean, you can't argue with the output and the work that he's put in and the mindset and the mental toughness that he showed after struggling, getting a start, getting dropped, then coming off the bench and making an impact. I think that we discussed in the last episode that when everyone's healthy, if we have Brendan Aronson coming off the bench, the impact that he can have on a game is amazing. And he is the wild card coming off the bench if, everyone is healthy. And I think that's huge. And I want to keep seeing him improve with Salzburg. And then eventually, who knows, maybe get a move to a bigger club, whether that be Leipzig or another team in Europe's top 5 leagues, because he's another player that the sky is the limit for him. You see the talent, you see the work ethic, you see the desire and the drive that he has to win games, to chase down balls, the skill that he has to take players on, and just the ability to be in the right place at the right time as well.
Yeah, and I was almost thinking the same thing, on the topic of just the team in general. When we started making those changes on the halftime mark, what was the X factor that kind of spurred things to change, and ultimately led us to a 4-1 victory? And I think a lot of it came down to, apart from Ricardo Pepi, who without a doubt was man of the match, but Brenden Aaronson coming onto the field in exchange for Josh Sargent did wonders for us. And I think him coming off the bench is a huge X factor and just affecting the players around him, his directness, his willingness to get the ball forward and his drive and everything about him is really positive when coming off the bench. So I think that along with Pepi, along with Pulisic playing their best game in that the beginning of the second half, kind of spurred us on, kicked us on to get that.
Well, when Pulisic went down, I think I tweeted something out saying like, Brenden Aaronson, step it up. Like, we need you. This is your moment. And he stepped up to the occasion. He was involved in the first goal for Pepi, and then he ended up scoring the one to seal it, to give him the third goal of the match, which again, Pepi did a great job. He picked his head up, gave, a cross pass, the face of goal to Aaronson, and Aaronson made no mistake about it. And yeah, I mean, outside of, I think pretty clearly, I don't know, but pretty clearly, but Christian Pulisic's our best player. He's starting every game when he's has the opportunity to attack. Then you have Gio Reyna, who I think is still a little bit ahead of Brenden Aaronson with what he can do and what he's been doing for Dortmund and how we've seen him for the national team. But right there, you got Brenden Aaronson, and he's not a bad guy. If one of those dudes can't make a game or something happens in terms of injuries or fitness or lack thereof, there's not much of a step down when you go to Brenden Aaronson, and he's an X factor off the bench.
On that same vein, when you're moving into the conversation about Ricardo Pepi, do we think that that's where his influence lies as well? Ricardo Pepi is it being an X factor off the bench, or what do you think? He can be moving forward.
I mean, I would start him in the next game. If I'm being completely honest, if everyone's healthy, I'm starting Ricardo Pepi. We saw him start alongside Josh Sargent this game. And in the first half, obviously it was very disjointed, but at the end of the day, Josh Sargent was a non-factor. There was nothing about his game that stood out. He chased down balls. He worked hard. He did what Josh Sargent does. But the reality is Josh Sargent isn't scoring goals. Ricardo Pepi is on a tear right now. He's got 12 goals now in MLS. I believe he's up to 5 assists as well. And then he comes on he gets in his first start for the national team in a hostile environment, tough game. The team's not playing well. Second half, we turns around. Good cross from DeAndre Edlin, showing off his aerial ability with a fantastic header to give us the 2-1 lead. Then he gets played in behind and has the wherewithal and the know-about to not take a low-angle shot, maybe not quite a high percentage shot, but instead to slide the ball across the face of goal to Brenden Aaronson, who makes no mistake about it. And then on the second one, he gets in behind. And if it weren't for a good save, then, he would have had 2 goals.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Pepi right now is, like you mentioned, he's getting the job done. He's scoring the goals. We talked before we started recording, is he going to solve our number 9 problems? I don't think necessarily. It may be too early to say. I would put him in the mix with Pifak, with Giacchini, and Sargent and everyone. But I think what's really positive right now is the output for his age, and other guys, those other guys I mentioned that have had the output too. But Ricardo Pepi is going to be growing still, and there's clubs looking at him in Europe. So if he continues with this output, if he continues on this same vein moving forward, I think in the future potentially he could be in that bracket, taking that number 9 spot. Right now it's too early to tell, I would say, but yeah, I'd say play him still without a doubt.
Oh no, yeah, 100%. And what I'm trying to say is that he has the potential to be the entire package. He's a natural finisher, which is something a lot of the other strikers, while they do some good things, they're not a natural finisher in the way that Ricardo Pepi is. and how he can just slide the ball past the keeper, go up and win a ball in the air. He's big, 6'1". He's good in the air, and he's always dangerous. And the same thing that we were talking about Matthew Hoppe in the Gold Cup is it seems like whenever Ricardo Pepi gets on the ball in the attacking third, he's trying to make something happen. Even if nothing happens, it's always positive. And that's what I love about him.
Yeah, I think he offers something different for sure from what, our other options do. And I think that's, we talk about the number 9 all the time. We have DK as well, who offers something different. So as he continues, if he continues in this great form, I think he'll definitely pull ahead of the others. But right now, DK has also put up similar numbers to him. So we gotta stay humble. We gotta keep him in his place. He's got to keep working hard. Nothing for sure yet, but as he keeps working, I love to see it. I love to see the guy play.
And you know what? The team showed heart. And I think that's nothing we can really question. That's the only thing we can, at the end of the day, if they're showing heart and they're trying their hardest, I think that's the most important thing we can get behind. And they scored 3 goals after Christian Pulisic went down. That should say a lot.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, if this team's able to get it done, if we're able to bring guys off the bench, still find the back of the net without Christian Pulisic on the field, that's a good sign for sure.
The next international window starts on October 7th when the U.S. men's national team takes on Jamaica. Thank you guys all for joining us here on the YouTube channel in podcast form. We're going to keep talking about a little bit of updates, talk some Champions League start of the season stuff with you guys. For YouTube, like I said, we're going to split this up into 2 videos. Podcast, stay with us. And YouTube, go check out our next video.